Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. In just 4 days, flames devoured medieval London. But was it really an accident? The Great Fire of London, which raged from September 2nd to September 6th, 1666, consumed over 13,000 homes, 87 churches, and iconic structures like St. Paul's Cathedral, leaving an indelible mark on the city's history. Beginning in a small bakery on Pudding Lane, the fire quickly escalated into a catastrophic blaze, fueled by narrow streets and timber-framed buildings dried by a hot summer. While officially blamed on chance and carelessness, the fire's origins, speed, and aftermath have long stirred debate and speculation. In this video, we delve into the true causes of the fire, explore the scale of destruction it brought to 17th century London, unravel the myths that still surround it today, and uncover the surprising ways it shaped the modern city that rose from the ashes. 17th century London was a sprawling, chaotic maze of wooden buildings and winding alleyways, a city ripe for disaster. The homes were mostly timber-framed, with overhanging upper stories that nearly touched across the narrow streets, making fire spread dangerously easy. These cramped quarters housed a rapidly growing population, packed tightly in often filthy and unsanitary conditions. Open flames were used for cooking and lighting, while flammable materials like pitch and straw were common building elements. Fire hazards lurked on every corner. Just a year before the fire, the Great Plague of 1665 had claimed tens of thousands of lives, leaving the city anxious, tense, and spiritually shaken. Amid this fragile atmosphere, Pudding Lane held a particular importance. Located near the Thames, it was home to a concentration of bakers and merchants, their ovens blazing day and night to feed the city. It was in one of these bakeries, owned by Thomas Fariner, that the first sparks of the Great Fire would ignite, setting off a chain of destruction no one could have imagined. In the early hours of September 2nd, 1666, while most of London still slept, a small spark in the bakery of Thomas Fariner on Pudding Lane ignited what would become one of the most devastating fires in the city's history. Fariner, the king's baker, had likely failed to fully extinguish the fire in one of his ovens. In the silence of the night, flames caught hold of nearby firewood and quickly leapt to the surrounding structures. At first, the threat seemed minor. Fires were common in London, and the family managed to escape through an upstairs window, though a maid tragically perished in the blaze. Neighbors and watchmen underestimated the danger, assuming it could be easily contained. But strong easterly winds and tightly packed wooden buildings created the perfect storm for the fire to explode out of control. There was no central firefighting service, only local parish volunteers, armed with leather buckets, fire hooks, and gunpowder for demolishing buildings to create fire breaks. Confusion and slow decision-making allowed the fire to spread rapidly. By the time the authorities recognized the scale of the threat, it was already too late. The inferno had begun its deadly march through the heart of London. As dawn broke on September 2nd, 1666, what began as a small blaze had erupted into a raging inferno, driven by fierce easterly winds that fanned the flames and sent burning debris flying through the air. The weather had been unusually dry for months, leaving the city's timber buildings brittle and highly flammable. Fire tore through entire streets, devouring homes, shops, and churches with terrifying speed. Efforts to create fire breaks by demolishing buildings were too slow and often met with resistance from property owners, further delaying any effective containment. The chaos was overwhelming. Families fled with whatever they could carry, carts jammed the narrow lanes, and smoke choked the air as ash rained down like black snow. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to glowing rubble in hours. The fire leapt across gaps between buildings, even vaulting the River Thames when sparks ignited warehouses filled with tar and oil on the South Bank. One by one, London's iconic landmarks fell. The Royal Exchange, Guildhall, and even the great St. Paul's Cathedral, believed to be fireproof due to its stone walls, succumbed to the heat. The cathedral's wooden scaffolding caught fire, and molten lead from its roof streamed down the streets like lava. First-hand accounts capture the terror and confusion of those days. Samuel Pepys, a naval administrator and diarist, wrote vividly about climbing a church tower to watch an infinite great fire, describing how he saw the churches, houses, and all on fire and flaming at once. His entries detail the desperation of the people, the hopelessness of the firefighting efforts, and the unimaginable scale of destruction. London was burning uncontrollably, and there seemed to be no end in sight. As the fire raged and the scale of destruction became clear, panic gripped the city, not just from the flames, but from fear, confusion, and suspicion. In the absence of clear answers, Londoners turned to blame, and hysteria quickly spread through the smoke-filled streets. Rumors took hold that the fire was not an accident, but an act of arson. Foreigners, particularly the Dutch and French, England's enemies in the ongoing Anglo-Dutch wars, became immediate scapegoats. Crowds attacked anyone who looked or sounded foreign, accusing them of starting fires or poisoning wells. Many were arrested without evidence, and some were beaten or killed by mobs. The paranoia was further fueled by deep-rooted religious tensions. Anti-Catholic sentiment, already high in Protestant England, flared violently. Whispers spread that the fire was part of a Catholic plot to destroy London and overthrow the government. Catholics were harassed, and suspicion seeped into every part of society. Even naturalized citizens and longtime residents faced hostility, caught in a wave of xenophobia and fear. The authorities struggled to maintain order amid the chaos, riots, and wrongful accusations, often detaining innocent people just to pacify the angry crowds. In the ashes of London, the fire ignited not only buildings but the darkest fears and divisions within society. As the inferno devoured more of London, desperate efforts to stop it began to take shape. Initially, attempts to halt the fire with traditional methods, buckets of water, hand-pumped engines, and minor demolitions, proved useless against the scale of destruction. It wasn't until King Charles II personally intervened that decisive action was taken. Realizing that stronger measures were needed, he ordered the creation of large fire breaks. Entire rows of houses were to be pulled down to stop the fire's advance. The Duke of York, the king's brother, led the efforts on the ground, coordinating troops and laborers to use gunpowder to blow up buildings in the fire's path, sacrificing property to save the city. These drastic actions began to make a difference, though progress was still slow and dangerous. Then, nature lent a helping hand. On the fourth day, the powerful winds that had been driving the flames finally died down, allowing the fire breaks to hold. The fire, having lost its momentum, began to weaken. By the evening of September 5th, it was largely under control, though smoldering embers and flare-ups continued into the next day. The Great Fire burned for 4 days, from September 2nd to September 6, 1666, leaving behind a smoking wasteland where the heart of London once stood. It was a hard-won victory against a disaster that might have consumed the entire city, if not for bold decisions, brave action, and a timely change in the weather. In the aftermath of the Great Fire, London stood in ruins. Entire neighborhoods had vanished, and over 80% of the walled city was reduced to ash and rubble. Yet, remarkably, the official death toll was surprisingly low, fewer than 10 recorded deaths. However, many historians believe the true number was likely higher, as poor and unregistered individuals may have perished without record. While the human cost in lives seemed limited, the social and economic devastation was enormous. More than 70,000 people, nearly a sixth of the city's population, were left homeless, forced to live in makeshift camps, boats on the Thames, or outside the city gates. The financial losses were staggering. Businesses, markets, and entire industries were wiped out overnight. Merchants lost stock, craftsmen lost their tools, and the thriving heart of London's trade came to a standstill. Essential supplies like food, fuel, and clothing became scarce and expensive. Daily life was plunged into chaos as banks, shops, and public services struggled to operate. Even the government was displaced, forced to conduct business from temporary quarters. The architectural damage was equally profound. Over 13,000 homes and 87 churches were destroyed, along with countless public buildings and historical landmarks. The skyline of London had been permanently altered. The fire didn't just destroy structures, it uprooted lives, shook the economy, and left an entire population reeling in uncertainty, facing the monumental task of rebuilding their city from the ashes. In the wake of the Great Fire, London faced the immense challenge of rebuilding not just its physical structures, but its identity as a capital city. Visionaries like Sir Christopher Wren stepped forward with bold ideas for a modern metropolis. Wren envisioned wide boulevards, organized street grids, and grand public squares that would rival the great cities of Europe. Though his full master plan proved too ambitious to implement amid property disputes and budget constraints, many of his ideas still influenced the city's rebirth. One of Wren's greatest achievements was the redesign and reconstruction of St. Paul's Cathedral. The old Gothic structure had been reduced to ruins, and in its place rose a magnificent Baroque masterpiece, crowned with a massive dome that would become an enduring symbol of London's resilience. Wren also oversaw the rebuilding of dozens of churches and key public buildings, blending functionality with beauty in a style that gave the city a more unified and elegant appearance. The government quickly enacted new building regulations to prevent another disaster. Timber-framed homes were banned within city limits, and new constructions were required to use fire-resistant materials like brick and stone. Streets were widened, alleys reduced, and planners placed greater emphasis on accessibility and public safety. The Great Fire had laid waste to medieval London, but from its ashes emerged a more modern city, one shaped by the hard lessons of catastrophe and built with a vision for a safer, stronger future. Over time, the Great Fire of London became shrouded in myths and lingering questions. One of the most persistent is whether the fire was an act of arson. In the chaos of 1666, many believed it was a deliberate attack, possibly by foreign enemies or Catholics, but no solid evidence ever supported these claims. The official cause remained accidental, a spark from Thomas Farriner's bakery. Farriner himself denied responsibility and continued his trade after the fire, leading some to question whether he had been unfairly blamed. Yet there was no trial. No confession, only suspicion. Another common belief is that the fire ended the Great Plague of 1665. While it's true the plague never returned on such a scale, the connection is debated. The fire did destroy the worst-infested areas and may have killed off plague-carrying rats and fleas, but public health improvements and changing conditions likely played a greater role in halting the epidemic. Finally, many people are surprised by the low number of reported deaths. Only a handful were officially recorded. This has led to speculation that more perished but went undocumented, especially among the poor and homeless who had no one to report their loss. Whether due to poor record-keeping or the rapid spread of the fire, the true human toll remains uncertain, lost in the smoke and ash of history. The legacy of the Great Fire of London endures not only in history books, but also in the city's very fabric. Standing near the site where the fire began is the Monument to the Great Fire, a towering column designed by Sir Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke, serving as both a memorial and a symbol of resilience. More importantly, the fire sparked lasting changes in fire safety laws and urban planning, introducing stricter building codes that favored brick and stone, wider streets, and improved access for firefighting. These reforms laid the foundation for modern city planning, influencing not only London, but urban design across Britain and beyond. The Great Fire transformed London from a medieval city vulnerable to disaster into a safer, more architecturally sophisticated metropolis, shaping the evolution of British architecture and urban life for centuries to come. The Great Fire of London was a catastrophe that reshaped a city, a society, and the course of history itself. From its humble beginnings, in a bakery on Pudding Lane, the fire revealed the dangers lurking in London's crowded streets and fragile infrastructure. It exposed social tensions, sparked panic and blame, but also inspired bold action and innovation. The rebuilding that followed set new standards for safety, design, and urban planning that continue to influence cities today. From ashes, London rose stronger, but only after the flames had laid bare its weaknesses. What do you think was the most surprising part of the Great Fire of London? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on this remarkable event.